welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, let's see what the Sun's got for you this morning. Rio nabs an intruder in home raid terror is a dramatic headline. It says he apparently held down a garden prowler until police arrived.
That is a concern, though, because his wife is heavily pregnant. So that's a bit of a worry.
Worrying,
and I think they've got 4 children. She's pregnant with them. Yeah, it's a big worry. So I hope everyone's OK. I'm sure they are. What paper is this now? This is The Telegraph. It focuses on Labour's plan to let EU citizens vote in British elections.
Ooh, that's not going to go down well with a lot of people, is it? The Observer has Tory anarchy breaking out as a revolt looms on Brexit laws. That's the bonfire, the Brexit bonfire sort of thing, where all these laws were meant to be getting rid of, and they've pulled back on that. Kemi Badenoch says it's not happening now.
Well, it's time now to go through the rest of this Sunday's headlines, and joining us to do just that is editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, and the author, Nikki Hodgson. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Really good to see you. And let's start, shall we, Tom, with Sunak losing control in the Observer.
Yes, the front page of the Observer is a story that you've already been talking about this morning, which is all of the rancour within the Conservative Party, particularly the right of the Conservative Party, the kind of pro-Boris Johnson wing of the party, who had this conference in Bournemouth, the Conservative Democratic Organisation, which is widely interpreted as a kind of pro-Boris front, essentially. You had Priti Patel addressing the crowd, talking about how the party was in decline, getting a standing ovation for saying so. Nadine Dorries, very a firm Johnson supporter, talking about a sense of drift setting and so on.
She's still an MP, though.
Apparently so.
But she's going, isn't she?
Well, it seems like she's. This is her sort of last way around the track in terms of being in the House of Commons, certainly. But it's all those kind of people who were either associated with Boris Johnson or at least are very upset with the direction of travel under Rishi Sunak, and particularly after the local elections drubbings that the Conservative Party went through. Those parts of the party feel like their tails are up at this point.
But wouldn't it be better keeping their mouths shut? If they want to have a moan after the next general election, whichever way it goes.
Well, they would, unless they think they can replace Rishi for some reason. Or
somehow win.
Exactly, which seems to be some kind of bizarre plan that, I don't know, it appears to be fermenting in some people's minds in the Tory party.
If they got a new leader in now, there's no way they could build up the confidence.
People would think they were even madder.
Well, they would think they were even madder, but it might secure their job. That's just what I mean, for a little bit longer. It might keep them in politics a bit longer. Because if you think about MPs, they're not often thinking about sitting forever as an MP. What they're thinking about is always being around in politics and having influence on the party that they were a member of. Right. So, it's power play, basically. You've got to put your head above the parapet to sort of say, well, you're actually rubbish. Because if you all do it together as well, then you're less likely to kind of, get attacked and taken down individually.
Do you think there's enough power in this group on this side of the Tory party to do that, to have that sort of influence?
Well, like I say, I think they're thinking about the longevity of their political careers, not thinking about, well, will this keep me in office right now? They're thinking about what they're going to do next. And they want to be known for things, don't they? So I think politicians get to a point where they're thinking about their legacy. What do I say now that I'll be remembered for in 10 years' time? And I was the one that was right about what Rishi needed to do, and he didn't do it. And if he had done it, maybe he would have won. It's that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
It's all strategy.
Mind you, when it comes to what Rishi is doing, the Sunday Express, Nicky, says he will not budge on his plans to deal with illegal immigration.
Yeah, so, he's having all this criticism,
which is what this group would want.
Which is exactly what this group would want, which is why he's sticking to his guns on it. He's sort of saying it's what the British people want. I mean, I dispute that because I don't think everybody does. And I think, if you look at the latest YouGov surveys, which there's a tracker that's done that's constantly analysing if people support the barges, for example, and the results are very, very poor and not really in favour. Even if people think immigration is a problem, they don't think the Tories are handling it well or that they've got the right solutions for it. But Rishi's kind of ploughing on and saying, we're having a crisis, we've got to tackle this, I'm the only person that can do it, I'm the only person that dares do it. Because, he thinks, well, Keir Starmer wouldn't use barges. I think that's pretty obvious from things that he said about it. But again, this policy appeals to the right of his party, but is it too little too late for him? Because he's got to implement it yet, He's sort of doubled down and said, I'm going to basically get as many barges as we need to secure every illegal migrant coming to this country, but he's got to implement it yet. And to be honest, with the barges that he's already kind of okayed, I think there's going to be a lot of trouble. I'm fully expecting us to see a news story where there's kind of some kind of ransacking or there's some kind of violence, and it could be from anybody in the community, but he's got to kind of literally test the waters with the ones that he's got going first before he does this.
Yeah. No, so what do you reckon, Tom?
Well, it's just that sort of question about can he deliver on these 5 pledges of his in a way that's people actually feel before the next election. I mean, the only one he's likely to do is to halve inflation because people expect that to come down anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's necessarily going to get the credit for it either. I think the problem with the Conservative Party is, in a sense, Rishi Sunak is the least of their problems at the moment. He's still polling ahead of his party. It's just the hole that they dug for themselves, particularly over the past 12 months, and that merry-go-round of leaders and the Liz Truss premiership. And I think Rishi Sunak is the least of their problems at the same time because he doesn't have any of that kind of sense of vision. This is what I want the future to look like. It's very much steady as she goes. Let's just focus on the here and now. That's not going to help them either, but they're just damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Yeah. I'm quite perturbed by not perhaps for the obvious reasons. Sunday Telegraph, Labour to give EU citizens the vote. What worries me about stories like this is when parties say, oh yes, there's a particular group of the electorate who we know would vote for us, but currently don't. So we're going to let them have the vote. It's a bit like the SNP, whatever, letting 16-year-olds vote in Scotland or whatever.
No, precisely. And I think it's very similar to that as far as it's not just about the 3.4 million EU nationals who have settled status. There's also an extra 2.6 who have pre-settled status, but they also Labour want to follow through on their previous manifesto commitments to extend it to 16 and 17-year-olds as well, which is one of the more curious things is that they want to make it more and more difficult for young people to do all kinds of things. They can't smoke a cigarette, but they can vote in an election. I mean, none of this really seems to make much sense unless you look at it with the eye for naked political gain, which is what a lot of this comes down to. And of course, if people have been living in this country for a long time and paying taxes and so on, you want them to be able to have as much say in how our country is run as anyone else. But why not just apply for citizenship, formally become a part of the country, and then enjoy all the rights that citizenship flows from it? Otherwise, it does just look like a kind of form of gerrymandering. And also, if all of these policies did come through, it would expand the electorate by 8%. That's huge.
Yeah.
And you can't help but feel that that's just with, again, political gain in mind in that sense.
Yeah, well, the problem is, of course, you say sort of get your citizenship. Obviously, the Home Office takes ages to do anything. So there's loads of people that have probably been waiting a very long time to get that processed. I mean, other countries do have similar policies. Like Australia, for example, you don't have to be. You can be settled, the equivalent of settled status, and you can vote. So it's not that this is a kind of radical policy. It isn't. And to be fair to Keir, I mean, if you are going to come up with something that's going to benefit you and benefit others, well, this sounds quite reasonable, even if it does sound even if it does sound a bit manipulative. But it's not really any different from the Tories redrawing the constituency boundaries.
But the Tories don't redraw them, do they? There's an independent constituency office.
In theory there is, but there are often boundaries that are redrawn with some manoeuvring behind the scenes that allow the Tories to get more votes. Yeah. So they don't tend to work in favour of Labour. So everybody tries these tactics, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Nikki, away from politics, there's one other big story on the agenda.
Well,
we say that. There's always a bit of politics in Eurovision, isn't there? But we do have to touch on Eurovision. And should we start with Princess Catherine?
Yeah, so if you did watch Eurovision, if you didn't last night, you would have seen the Princess of Wales, who appeared for a few seconds performing as part of Ukraine's entry for last year, Stefania it's called, and she was playing piano. She's an accomplished pianist, we know that. I presume she was shot at home. It looks like it's Kensington Palace or somewhere.
It was Windsor.
It was Windsor, great, okay. So, it was actually... It was quite poignant. I was quite moved by seeing her, and it actually was a very powerful moment, I thought, for the contest. It's interesting because you see, obviously, Charles is king now. It feels like everyone's got to step up a little. And, Zelensky had applied to give an address, and the Eurovision Council sort of said, well, that's too political. And it's interesting that, Kate has this kind of softer power. I mean, it is power, actually. It's hard power, but we consider it to be softer, and it's kind of more diplomatic. So, it was sending a powerful message to the viewers that, the UK is in solidarity with Ukraine. We're on your side.
Yeah, it worked.
It worked really well.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a fan of Kate or the Royals, but
what?
No, I'm not. I'm not a Royalist. I'm a Republican, so.
Are you really?
Yes. That's why you didn't see me last week, or nobody wants to hear what I've got to say about
No, but that's
Royal
interesting,
family.
though, as someone who is a Republican, who still looks at that and says,
yeah, I can see it absolutely worked. And, she's got a lot of presence, she's got a lot of poise. She has a lot of power, and I think it's used well.
What do you make of Tom?
No, I thought it was an interesting moment. I didn't see any of Eurovision, I should say. But
What?
Catching up on it this morning.
Oh,
Come on.
I've watched maybe like 2 or 3 in my life. It's not that I'm against it. It's just not.
Just not your cup of tea.
you're not for it.
Fortunately not.
Oh, okay.
But I read up on what I needed to this morning.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do
well,
my
let's-
research.
Well, you missed out. Did you watch any of it, Nikki?
I did, yeah.
Watched it?
Everybody else in my family was asleep, but I was still there.
I'm sorry for me. There were two
By myself, having a fight.
standout moments for me. One was the Princess of Wales, and one was Mel Gedroych churning butter.
Oh, yes. I mean,
Which-
she's terrific anyway.
Yeah.
I
Well,
enjoyed
she's
her
best of
commentary as
British.
well.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
It was just one of those moments where you're just like, what?
There were a lot of what moments last night. If you went away from the
Fabulous.
telly and came back in, you were like, what has gone on in the 2 minutes I've been away? So,
Oh, it's Eurovision though. What do you think of Mae Muller, second from bottom?
I didn't love the song, to be honest. Wasn't a fan of the song. I don't know what it is with us. We've got some incredible songwriters, and for some reason, when it comes to Eurovision, we almost lose our vision. We panic. We do what they think. We do what we think they want, not what we just really love. And I think that's where we go wrong.
We don't pull out the big guns, I don't think.
No, we don't.
Eurovision. I don't think we put. I mean, Sam Ryder yesterday was the exception. Last year was the exception to the rule.
Right.
But generally, it's not always the best songs, as you say. Not always the
Well, no,
best
and I don't
singers.
know what's to do with.
I
because
didn't like the Sam Ryder song last year.
I didn't love it, but I could see how it worked. It was perfect. I thought it worked perfectly for Eurovision.
Whereas the song he did last night, his new song with Roger Taylor and all that,
Yeah.
actually I thought was excellent. I thought, well, that'd win if it was around this year.
You almost feel like there's some, I don't know, hidden rules about what you can submit, and if it's too good, you can't have it. I don't know, because other countries do put in their best pop stars with their best songwriters. I don't know what it is in our heads that we get wrong about it.
Maybe we don't take it seriously enough as a nation. I think
Well,
a lot
I
of
think
people
we do
scoff at it,
now.
don't they, Tom?
Yeah. I don't scoff at it. But no, from what I understand, it is the case that for whatever reason, just there's just not that kind of focus on finding the right people, putting the right songwriters in the same room. Whereas it is that sort of thing where you go around Europe and there is just that extra level of excitement.
There's a danger. I've been in one of the groups last night called was it Slovenia? I can't remember the country, but they're called Joker Out, and it was like a boy band sort of thing, and they are massive in their own country. They're like the Vamps over here. They're absolutely huge, and they didn't do very well last night. I can see why it wasn't a particularly Eurovision song, but they are a huge band in their own right.
Whereas every year it feels like the Eurovision entry, people are like, I don't know who that is.
That's always what people say, exactly.
And then the best they can hope for is kind of infamy afterwards for being a bit of a running joke most of the time, with the exception of last year.
But some people who've been Eurovision one-hit wonders have, greater longevity in their careers. Everybody knows who Gina G is, for example.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
is.
Even Ellie knows.
Gina G?
Do you know that's? Oh, she probably does if she hears the song. We're not
I just
listening
nodded
it.
along.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more? Just a very quick word on Boris.
Just quickly, go.
Yes.
I'm being told
Very
now.
quickly. So he's fine.
20 seconds. Tell us about Boris buying a house.
He's finally bought a house, 3.8
He's been looking
million
for a while.
worth. He has.
What, he was skint?
He was staying at various different other people's houses in Kensington and in the countryside and so on. So he's finally bought this 7-bedroom, £3.8 million house. Apparently he negotiated a very good deal, which is something which is flagged up here. But no, he's finally setting down roots.
Oh, well, there you go. He's had to save up for a bit, and he's managed to save £3.8 million
That
in a few
speaking
months.
circuit's working for him.
Yeah,
Yeah, it certainly
isn't it,
is.
Joss?
Yeah.
Thanks both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later.